All right, so get this. We're diving into gene editing today.
Yeah.
And not just any gene editing.
Yeah.
But the kind that could, like, wipe out heart disease.
Oh, wow.
It sounds pretty wild, right?
It definitely is pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible.
Yeah.
And the company that's leading this charge is Verve Therapeutics. They are aiming to make cholesterol meds a thing of the past.
Imagine that. A single treatment,
Mm.
and your cholesterol is permanently lowered.
Yeah.
That's the holy grail that Verve is chasing.
Yeah.
But like with any really ambitious venture, there are always questions, right?
What are the questions?
Can they actually deliver on this promise? What is their track record like?
Mm.
And, should we even be messing with our DNA in this way?
Yeah. All important questions. These are all questions that we're going to tackle today. We've got a stack of research, news articles, and financial reports to dissect. And we'll break it down into 3 parts for you. First, we'll unravel Verve's business model. Then we'll assess their leadership team and financial health. And trust me, there's a lot more to uncover after that. But for now, let's just focus on understanding the heart of Verve's operation.
Okay, so Verve is all about gene editing therapies for people with or at risk of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, or ASCVD.
Yeah.
But let's be real for a sec. Most people probably don't even know what ASCVD is.
You're right. It's not exactly dinner table conversation.
No.
ASCVD is essentially the buildup of plaque in your arteries, and it's the leading cause of death worldwide.
Wow.
So we're talking about a massive problem, and Verve is tackling it head on.
Yeah, they're not just going after ASCVD broadly, though. They're targeting the specific bad guys, like LDL-C, remnant cholesterol, and LPA. It's like a precision strike on the root causes of heart disease.
That's a great analogy. They're not just trying to manage symptoms. They are aiming for a complete knockout. And their lead programs, VERVE-102, VERV-101, and VERV-301, each focus on one of these cholesterol culprits.
Now, I'm curious about their revenue model. They're still in clinical trials, so they're not selling any actual treatments yet, right?
Right.
So how do they keep the lights on?
Well, they've got a smart strategy in place. Verve generates revenue through partnerships with big pharma companies like Eli Lilly. These collaborations involve research services, milestone payments, and even future royalties if their treatments get approved.
It was like a win-win. They get funding to continue their research, and these like established players get a piece of the potentially groundbreaking therapies.
Exactly. And this approach is quite different from the traditional drug development model, which often focuses on like incremental improvements and chronic treatments.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting for me. Verve's approach has the potential to like disrupt the entire healthcare landscape. I mean, if they can actually cure heart disease with a single treatment, the implications are huge. Think about the costs saved on medications, doctor visits, hospital stays.
It's a paradigm shift, and it could have ripple effects throughout the entire industry. But before we get too carried away with the potential, let's step back and evaluate the team behind Verve. Are they the right people to navigate this complex and ambitious endeavor?
Yeah, let's meet the brains behind the operation. First up, we've got Sakar Kathirasan. He's the CEO. He's not your typical business suit CEO.
No, he is actually a cardiologist and a geneticist.
Wow.
It's like he was born to lead this company. And he's got a track record of success in cardiovascular research and drug development.
So he's got the scientific chops and the business acumen to steer Verve toward his goals. What about the rest of the leadership team?
Well, they've assembled a team with deep experience in biotech research and drug development. These are people who understand the intricacies of gene editing and the challenges of bringing new therapies to market.
But let's not sugarcoat things. They've had their share of setbacks, right?
Yeah.
Didn't one of their trials hit a snag?
You're right. They did have to halt enrollment for VERVE-101 after a serious adverse event in a clinical trial.
I can only imagine how devastating that must have been.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. They didn't give up. They pivoted to VERVE-102, which uses a different delivery method. That shows adaptability and a willingness to learn from their mistakes.
It's a crucial trait in the ever-evolving world of biotech. You have to be able to adjust and refine your approach as you go. So they've got a solid team, a bold vision, and they're not afraid to learn from their setbacks. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. Money.
Yes, let's dive into Verve's financial health. Are they stable enough to see this through?
Because developing cutting-edge gene editing therapies can't be cheap. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of their financials and see what we can uncover.
Well, in 2024, they saw a revenue growth of 174.98%, which is pretty impressive. They're also sitting on a healthy cash pile of $524.3 million.
Wow, those numbers sound promising. So they've got the financial fuel to keep the engine running.
For now, yes. But it's important to remember that they're not profitable yet. This is common for clinical stage biotech companies. They're investing heavily in research and development, which eats into their cash flow.
So it's a bit of a tightrope walk. They need to keep spending to advance their research, but also need to manage their burn rate carefully. Makes you wonder what the big money players on Wall Street think about all of this.
Right. Let's talk about market sentiment. What's Wall Street whispering about Verve? Are they optimistic about their future, or are they hesitant?
Right. Because potential doesn't always translate to profit. Are investors buying into the hype, or are they approaching with caution?
Well, the overall sentiment is quite positive. Analysts have given Verve an average buy rating, with an average price target of $25.50. That suggests they see significant upside potential for the stock.
So Wall Street seems to be betting on Verve, even after that setback with the VERV 101 trial. But there was also that news about Vertex Pharmaceuticals pulling out of their partnership. Did that spook investors at all?
It definitely raised some eyebrows. Vertex said they were shifting priorities, but Verve retained full rights to the liver disease program they were working on together.
So even though they lost a big partner, they still have control over that research, which could be valuable down the line. But biotech stocks are known for their volatility. Has Verve's stock price been on a roller coaster ride?
It has been a bit bumpy, which is typical for the biotech sector, but the strong investor interest, particularly from institutional investors, seems to be keeping things relatively stable.
Speaking of institutional investors, let's talk about who's backing Verve. Who are the power players with a stake in the company's future?
Verve has a surprisingly high institutional ownership, almost 98%. That means giants like Alphabet Inc., BlackRock Inc., and BVF Insial are all betting on Verve's success.
Wow, that's a serious vote of confidence. What does that level of institutional ownership mean for Verve? Does it provide stability? Or could it create potential conflicts of interest?
It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can bring stability. These large institutions tend to have a long-term investment horizon and aren't easily swayed by short-term market fluctuations.
So it's like having a strong foundation of support.
Exactly. But it's also important to consider potential conflicts of interest. These institutions might have their own agendas that could influence Verve's decisions.
Okay, so it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
There's a potential downside to having these big players calling the shots. But what about the people actually running Verve? Do they have skin in the game?
They do. Insider ownership is around 5.29%, which suggests that management believes in their own success. And there have been positive insider transactions recently, with more buying than selling.
That's a good sign. It shows they're putting their money where their mouth is. But let's be realistic. Investing in any biotech company comes with risks. What are some of the potential roadblocks Verve might face?
A good way to assess that is through a SWOT analysis. Let's break down their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay, let's start with the positives. What are Verve's biggest strengths?
Their innovative gene editing technology. Specifically, base editing is a major strength. It's more precise and potentially safer compared to older gene editing techniques.
So they're using cutting-edge tools to potentially minimize unintended consequences. That's reassuring. What else?
Their robust R&D pipeline is another key strength. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They have multiple programs targeting different aspects of cardiovascular disease, which diversifies their portfolio and increases their chances of success.
So it's like a multi-pronged attack on heart disease. They've got a backup plan if one approach doesn't pan out, and they've got the experienced management team to steer the ship. But what about weaknesses? Every company has them.
One notable weakness is their dependence on collaboration revenue. They don't have any approved products on the market yet, so their income relies heavily on these partnerships, which can be unpredictable.
Right, so their financial stability is somewhat precarious. They're at the mercy of these collaborations. What else should investors be wary of?
Their early stage of development, with no approved products, is another weakness. They're burning through cash to fund research and have yet to prove their technology can successfully make it to market.
It's a high-risk, high-reward scenario. Investors are essentially betting on their future potential. And speaking of the future, what are some opportunities Verve can capitalize on to achieve that potential?
The ever-expanding gene editing and cardiovascular disease treatment market presents a huge opportunity. There's a massive and growing demand for new and innovative treatments for heart disease.
It's a multi-billion-dollar market, ripe for disruption. And Verve's one-time gene editing therapies could grab a significant chunk of that market share. But they're not the only players in the game, right? What about the competition?
Competition from other biotech companies is definitely a threat. The gene editing space is getting crowded, and Verve needs to stay ahead of the curve to maintain its edge.
So they need to constantly innovate and outmaneuver their rivals. What other threats should we be aware of?
Regulatory hurdles are a major concern. Gene editing is a new and complex field, and regulators are still figuring out how to oversee its development and application.
So they could face delays or even rejections from regulatory bodies like the FDA? That could be a major setback.
Absolutely. And the potential for unforeseen side effects from gene editing therapies is a threat that can't be ignored. We're still learning about the long-term impacts of this technology, and there's always the risk of unintended consequences.
It's a sobering thought. It highlights the importance of thorough research and cautious development when it comes to such powerful technology.
Exactly. Balancing innovation with responsibility is crucial. But let's zoom out for a minute and consider the big picture.
Okay, so we've covered Verve's business model, leadership, financials, market sentiment, ownership structure, and even delved into a SWOT analysis. What's the bottom line?
Verve Therapeutics is a company on a mission to revolutionize cardiovascular disease treatment with its one-time gene editing therapies. They have a lot going for them, a strong leadership team, promising technology, and the backing of major investors.
But they also face significant challenges: financial uncertainty, regulatory hurdles, and the inherent risks associated with gene editing. It's a high-stakes game with a lot of unknowns. But there's one more thing we haven't explored yet, something that could blow your mind. Remember that end hook I teased at the beginning?
Yes, the one about the wider implications of Verve's gene editing technology.
Exactly. While Verve is laser-focused on heart disease, this technology has far-reaching potential. What if this is just the tip of the iceberg? It makes you wonder if this could be the beginning of a whole new era in medicine.
It's a tantalizing thought. If Verve can successfully apply gene editing to cure heart disease, it could pave the way for tackling other diseases that were once considered incurable.
We're talking about things like Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
cancer, even genetic disorders. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
It does, doesn't it? But it's a future that could be within our reach. Of course, this kind of power comes with immense responsibility. There are ethical considerations to grapple with, potential unintended consequences to consider.
It's a Pandora's box, but one that could hold the key to a healthier future for humanity. It's both exciting and a little terrifying, to be honest.
I think that's a healthy perspective to have. We need to approach this technology with both optimism and caution, embracing its potential while acknowledging the risks.
And that's precisely why we do these deep dives, to explore the cutting edge of science and technology, to understand the potential and the risks, and to spark these important conversations.
We hope you found this deep dive into Verve Therapeutics insightful and thought-provoking. And if you're as fascinated by the world of biotech as we are, be sure to subscribe to the Stock Analytics AI YouTube channel for more in-depth analysis of Verve and other companies shaping the future of medicine.
And remember, this deep dive is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. Always do your own research and consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.